I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item we have is the review and approval of consent items. We have the April 13th, 2020 meeting minutes. We have an account payroll manifest of April 21st, 2020 in the sum of $30,513.11, and of June 28th, 2020 in the sum of $95,151.15. We have a payroll manifest of June 23rd, 2020 in the sum of $52,799.07, and June 30th, 2020 in the sum of $52,674.62. We have the March Town Clerk reconciliation. We have 4 property tax abatements, 2 veteran credits, John P. Curtin, Conservation Alternate Member, term to expire March 31st of 2023, and Alan Sandler, Library Trustee Alternate Member, term expiring March 31st, 2021. Are there any items members would like to have removed from consent? Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve the items?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Leary, second by Mr. Pinciero. All those in favor? Mr. Leary?
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle? Bandwidth issues. Mr. Pinciero?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. Are there any other items of business members would like to have added to the agenda this evening?
Under member input, I have a notice from the Historical Society about Memorial Day. We can do that during member input, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yep.
Okay, public input will occur no earlier than 6:45 p.m. The first item of business is John Brunel, Public Safety Communication System. Mr. Brown.
Okay, I'll just introduce this, but as we all recall, we had a ballot question to approve the Public Safety Communication System project. That was Article number 7, and it was approved by the voters. John Brunel, our IT director, has been working ever since that article was passed and is working directly with the department heads and the 2 vendors that will supply the material and install the equipment. So he's asked to be on the agenda this evening, and I'll turn it over to him to present to you what he has. The goal here is to, one, make sure the board is still on board with moving forward with this project. It's a public safety project and very much needed. And 2, to approve giving the authority for John to be the project manager and authorizing me to execute all the documents we need to start moving towards financing. This will be a lease purchase agreement that we'll be making to finance the project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brunel, welcome.
Yep, thank you. It is, I think, as Troy set up, basically looking for seeking continued support from the board to proceed with the project. This is a quick summary of what the project scope is. The voters approved a replacement of a complete radio system that is about 22 years old. That is a system that's going to support, as a combined unit, police, fire, and highway, and additionally extend services into the school system for our SRO, for our school resource officers, and potentially allow the school to ride it also. As I said, the system we currently have today is 3 disparate systems that is actually in a state of failure. They're roughly about 22 years old. We went forward, the board approved, and we went forward with the warrant, and the voters approved it. We're now ready to start the project. A couple of factors that are getting in, so a couple of factors to think about. One, COVID-19 is presenting some challenges with the schedule, so I'll bring it forward. We don't know what kind of impact that's going to be. But the project outline, the project schedule was 6 months from start to finish. From time we place order to time we go operational is 6 months. And originally it targeted about October timeframe going live. With COVID-19, we have a little bit of a variable there because we don't know if we're going to be able to get all the components, but we need to place that order so that we can basically get in line and get those orders placed. So as Troy said, what I'm looking for is just approval to proceed with the project within the scope we talked about. We need to cut some POs to Motorola and Hvac, which is our vendor. They're both single source or sole source providers. To get some of the work underway. I mean, the first phase of the work is the metal work for the towers, acquiring some of the gear, and getting it all ready to stage. At this point, we're still shooting for a end of October, November timeframe operationally. But that could get, if we delay, and not getting the POs out to those folks at the end of this month, that could delay us until December and January next year. So again, just looking for continued support and moving the project forward.
Okay, thank you. Members, any input, questions?
I think, whereas it's approved by the voters, and although we said we were going to try and curb our spending, this I see as a safety thing, so that when we get back up and running, the schools get back up and running, I think it's imperative that we have this project moving forward. I don't know how the other members feel. I know they're kind of new with this, but you and I are the two, well, Kevin too, but he's not with us tonight, but you and I are the ones that are most in the knowledge of this. And I would assume that the school would probably be on board. But we might want to check with them. But I think it's very imperative that we move forward with this.
I agree with you 100%, Bob. You know, right now it's the safety. They can't call out a certain hollows in town. Fire and police can't communicate together. You know, from the way I understand it, the school is just an added on service we get with this based on the equipment. So, you know, we're actually taking care of, and Department of Public Works, so we're taking care of our 4 most important avenues with the system. So I think we should support moving forward with it. Any other input?
Jack, Rich?
No, I support you 100%, John.
All right, with
It's been a
that,
long time coming.
definitely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So with that, we need a motion to proceed.
Okay.
So motion made.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion. So the motion that was actually written up was, I move to proceed with the Public Safety Communication System Project as approved on 2020 ballot, Article 7, and to appoint the IT Director as Project Manager and the Town Administrator to execute all financial contracts and purchase orders for said purchase. Furthermore, to issue purchase orders to Two-Way Communications and Motorola as the authorized by the town purchasing policy. So that would be the motion that we would be making. Is that the one you're putting forth, Jack? Okay, so we have a motion.
Moving that motion forward.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Pinciero. We had a second by Mr. LaSalle. Do we have any discussion?
Are we going to just keep the school in the loop on this because they are part of it? Let them
Yes.
know what we're doing?
John?
Okay.
Yep. Like I said, the school can ride on. They're not obligated to get on, but they can.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
All right, so we need
Very good.
votes. Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. The next item we have is John Brunel Technology and Communication Expendable Trust Fund. Mr. Brown.
Okay, Mr. Brunel brought to my attention that the digital recording system that the police department uses to record all radio and phone communications for the department, which we all know is extremely important to make sure that stuff is recorded and able to be replayed. The system is in a state, I don't know if I want to call it a state of failure, but you can't really support it at this point in time. John will explain that to you. But this is a good candidate for our expendable trust fund that was created a couple of years ago for communication technology purposes. So John has provided you some background. He'll quickly go through it, and we'd be looking for your support to approve the expenditure
Okay,
from the fund.
thank you. Mr. Brunel?
Yeah, so as Troy stated, this is the recording system that records both phone and radio traffic for the police department. It's a system that was put in place around 2013 by the previous chief. I assumed the responsibility for it shortly thereafter. Over the last year or 2 years or so, it's been giving us some challenges where it doesn't always function the way it's supposed to function. We've been working with the vendor of record to try to resolve those issues, but we come to find out they're not investing in that technology. It requires some, an investment in their company to actually get it to be working again, which is basically replace the whole system. When I was doing our budgeting for last year, for this year's budget, it was one of those things we were going to put on the budget, but I decided to defer it because I thought we got through some of the problems we were having. But a recent event about a month ago or so caused another failure where we missed some important traffic. So it's becoming imperative that we got to get it replaced. The new system that we're proposing is a system that's used around the New England area, widely by a lot of agencies. But the system will actually allow us to bring on some phone traffic and things that we can't do today because the current system doesn't support that. It will also allow us to expand this recording mechanism on the new radio system we are putting in place, but additionally give us extension into the fire department phone system to be able to bring all these services together. Again, Hexacom, which is the company that we selected, is a company that provides the same service to the state. A lot of the state agencies, like I said, they're giving us a state bid with a state price. And based on some of the other competitive alignments we looked at in the past, pricing is actually significant. It's either a lot less than I've seen, but also in line with what other folks have paid for over the past couple of years. So if we don't, just so we're clear, this is something clear too. If we don't replace it, we'll continue using the system we have today, but just recognize that it's not doing the job it's supposed to do it, and it's actually missing a lot of things. That's actually, like I said in the previous statement, has caused us some inability to collect data that we need for evidence.
Okay, what is the dollar value we're looking for?
So the quote right now sits at $17,210. I'm asking the board to approve Troy to act on your behalf for not to exceed $18,000. The reason why I asked for a little bit of a buffer is because there's a few things I may have to get to replace some of the inductors into the system. But my goal would be to keep it at $17,210.
Okay, great. Board, any questions?
This is Rich. Where is this money coming from?
So it's an expendable trust fund, which is dedicated specifically for this purpose, which is technology and communication repairs and replacement. The funds cannot be used for any other purpose. So that's where they're going to be coming from. We have, I believe right now, we just replenished the fund at the 2020 election, and we have about $50,000 in the fund.
So we have the money on hand. It's not anything that's going to come out of the budget or anything.
No, it's not in the operating budget. It's an expendable trust fund.
Last 2 years, we've had warrant articles just for cases like this, and we appropriated 25 in 2019 and in 2020.
Mhm. Okay.
Which makes sense when you have aging IT systems as we have.
Mhm. Hmm.
So is it the will of the... Go ahead.
Technology, how long do we anticipate the technology will be able to be used?
Lifespan?
It should be 10 years.
Should be 10 years. Okay. How long did we get out of the last one, John?
The last one we got about 7. But just as a little history, it wasn't a recommended system. It was just put in place by an action that was taken outside of IT.
And the biggest driving factor right now is just you can't get components for it, correct?
But it's actually, the software is not being invested. So there is a couple of component problems we have, but the software itself is not being invested. The software that came with the system hasn't been upgraded in 5 years because there's no upgrades for it. But it has limitations and it doesn't work the way they described it was going to work.
Yeah, so we definitely need something.
Right. And as I said earlier, I deferred it because we know we had the trust fund to do the expendable trust fund and so an insurance policy for it. But if I thought it was going to fail sooner, I would have actually put it back in the budget.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And we've discussed it with the police and fire chiefs respectively.
Yes.
They're on board with it.
Yeah, currently the police chief's the only one that uses it today, and they're in dire need for it. They need to be able to have the coverage they don't have. As I said, this will allow us to extend it to the fire department today. In addition, it's being designed that they actually bolt on to the new radio system too. So there's no.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, thank you.
So what's the will of the board?
I'd like a motion to have John move forward with that technology because it is very important to both departments, police and fire.
In a sum not to exceed $18,000?
And a sum to not to exceed 18,000.
So we have a motion by Mr. Pinciero.
I'll second it.
We have second by Mr. Larry. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. Thank you, John, for all your work.
No, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
The next item is the Building Systems Expendable Trust Fund, HVA system. Mr. Brown.
All right, you may recall that I did give a report to the board at our last meeting that the scope of work that we set out to do for upgrading the police department and town hall HVAC system was completed 100%. With that, I don't want anyone to forget, because we'll probably talk about this again in the fall. We still have 2 units left to replace, and that's on the town office side. And I'll be getting quotes for that, but be trying to deal with it during the 2021 budget. During the upgrade, it was discovered, Selectman Lynch was working with the contractors, and it was discovered that the return air duct was undersized. And I guess having it undersized, you're not able to bring back the cooled air or the hot air quick enough to have all the equipment work efficiently, which explains why in the past few years we've been having, in the summertime, we've been having a lot of calls where the unit would freeze up and they would have to come out and do a service call, disconnect it, wait for it to thaw. And in the wintertime, we were never able to get the heat that we wanted to out of it. So we'd always have complaints of cold air. I think during this replacement, this upgrade, they actually realized for the first time when they were up there moving insulation stuff around that the return air ducts were undersized. So I don't have this kind of money available in our operating budget to repair. We have our building expendable trust fund. I look at this as an emergency repair because it's new equipment, and I'm told by the contractor that if it's not addressed, one, you're not going to get the efficiency that we want out of the new equipment, but 2, it could damage the new equipment we just installed. So the request is for the use of $5,000 from the Building Systems Expendable Trust Fund to correct this matter.
It
How
makes
much
sense. to
money
me.
do we have in that account right now?
So we try to maintain a $50,000 balance. We did, we had an article where we did just replenish the fund in March. So we have, we've had this expenditure, this expenditure, if it's approved, and we did approve $6,000 at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago to address the repairs that were done down at the clear span buildings down at the highway department.
Mhm.
So we had a little bit of funds available. I think we still probably have right around $50,000 in the fund.
And I agree that we need to fix this. If not, we're going to have the same freezing issues that we had last summer.
My greatest concern is, and I'm not an expert in HVAC, I know that Selectman Lynch was, he was concerned about it, said that it needed to be repaired, needed to be addressed, but was that, it could have an impact on the new equipment that we installed, that it would work harder.
Life expectancy.
Because it can't pull the amount of air through the system that it needs to. So it's working hard at trying to pull that air.
Gentlemen, any questions?
This is Selectman Lascelles again. Now this fund, I'm just thinking ahead of time, if we get into some sort of a budgeting crisis this fall or sometime next year, this particular fund, could it be used for any other purpose?
It could not. However, you could have a warrant article that would specifically ask the voters if they would take funds from this fund and repurpose them for a different purpose. You always have that right.
So in the last two cases, I felt it was a matter of safety and communications. I'm less apt to go with this one, although it seems to be important, and it might make sense from a money standpoint. I'm just wondering, with all the crises that I'm anticipating fall into next year, it would be prudent to not extend this. I'm just trying to think out loud here.
Yeah, I mean, my fear is, are we going to generate more costs in service calls, having the unit disconnected to unfreeze it in the summertime? And what is going to do to the life expectancy of the brand new equipment? So I think that's kind of the balancing act we have to look at here is, expending $5,000 versus what might be the cost, throughout the summer months and to the degradation of the new equipment. Just as something else for us to throw around.
I have a question. Was this just missed when the bid came in for the original work that's being done now? Or I don't understand. How did this come up?
So it's the original equipment. The air, the return vent was the original equipment when it was installed and the building was built. The contractor, the quote that he gave us was the heating system and the cooling system and just connecting to existing ductwork. When they were up there, that's when I understand, because they tore everything apart, moved insulation around. That's when it was discovered that the return ductwork was undersized. And because this company that we use has been in this building for years, they started connecting the dots and realized this was probably one of the biggest problems that they were fighting against over the past few years.
I think $5,000 is a cheap fix for this particular project. I think that if it's a matter of it putting more wear and tear on a brand new unit, then it would make no sense to bypass it for $5,000.
My only question on this would be, are they certain that this will take care of the problem that we've had? Or are we just putting $5,000 into something and we can continue to have the problem? Because whereas money is expected to be very tight this year, to spend it and not be certain that it is going to be the cure, that would be my reservation, just for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the company. They, what I do know is that this company, like any other HVAC company, it's the science, the math that they use is pretty standard in the business, where they know the BTUs and the per tons for the air conditioning and the amount of capacity that they need to be able to push stuff through to the building and then pull it back.
It's all based on CFM and the diameter of the pipes, how much back pressure.
Is this something maybe we could bring them forward and have them speak to us? Because I mean, I don't know this industry. I know very little about it, and I sense Selectman LaSalle's hesitation as well, and maybe even have Kevin speak to it. Being more knowledgeable in this area. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make sure that it's the right thing to do and that it's going to take care of the issue, that we're not going to have to continue to have to fix this problem down the road.
I would be far more comfortable if we did have Kevin weigh in on it.
Okay, so it sounds like the will's going to be to table this until we have the complete board to discuss. And if Troy, if you want to, and if you may, possibly if you want to get the company to do the calculations, show them to us, give a backup information or whatever that we can use as part of our decision-making process. And since it sounds like Selectman Lynch will be the resident expert.
Yeah, so just for clarification, because the next time we meet, we're going to start getting into air conditioning here soon. So this project's gone really well because we were able to, the timing was perfect. We're kind of in between heating and cooling. So it went really well. Just so we're all on the same page, do you want me to reach out to Selectman Lynch, have him have a conversation with Affiliated and have Kevin come back and report to the board? Or do you want me to ask Affiliated to see if they can come and attend a meeting?
I wouldn't mind seeing Affiliated come. I mean, then we can ask him. I mean, he could probably tell us more, more educationally than any of us can answer if this is something that will take care of the issue. If, my concern, I think Rich is probably the same, is if we spend the $5,000 to fix the problem, but it doesn't fix the problem, then what have we done?
Right. Okay. So I'll do that. And again, I just want to make sure we're clear. There was the contractor came to me and said the return ducts were undersized, which would cause the equipment to work inefficiently and work harder. And then they felt that this undersized probably could have led to some of the maintenance issues that we've had too. So I think you got two different issues here. Don't just focus on getting it frozen, the air conditioning getting frozen. It's about it being undersized and not being able to pull the air through at the quantity that's the equipment's designed to pull. So so I will have them come in, and it'd be a good time. I can have them explain to you too what's left of the project, so that when we're talking about it this fall, when we're putting together the budget, you'll understand. Because we were able to this project is funded by last year's funds, unexpended funds. And I don't have an estimate for the two remaining ones. But my guess is that we're probably somewhere, between 15, 18,000, maybe 20. So.
Okay, so let's do that. We'll table it. And if you can ask them to come at the next meeting, greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Troy.
So the next item is Corporal Gott Appreciation Letter. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I don't know, Selectman Leary, you want to handle this one, or?
I could if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it forward. And
Okay.
Put you on the spot. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We had in talking with Chief Sergeant, he was telling me about an incident where we had somebody passed away, and Officer Gott was responding. And I just want to read. So I asked Chief for a letter, telling what happened, so that I can relay this to the people in the town as to what some of the things that our police department do that are over and above the call of duty, because a lot of this is not really in his line of duty. He just did it, and it really makes the force and the town look really well. So I will read you Chief Sergeant's letter to me. It says, "Good morning, Robert. I want to provide you with an overview of the professional and positive actions of Corporal Gary Gott. On April 13th, Corporal Gott responded to an untimely death at a residence in town. These types of calls can be challenging, as officers are tasked with both comforting a grieving family who lost a loved one unexpectedly, while at the same time conducting a thorough death investigation. Part of the investigation is asking personal information about the deceased and obtaining other information that is pertinent to the medical examiner's office and responding funeral home. After the investigation was complete, the family requested the services of Dumont Sullivan Funeral Home of Hudson. Corporal Gott contacted the funeral home for the family. He provided the funeral director, Leo Dumont, with critical information about the deceased, the layout of the residence, and the options that would be available to safely and respectfully remove the deceased from the home. When the funeral home arrived on scene, Corporal Gott assisted in removing the deceased from the second floor of the residence. In speaking with many funeral home directors, not all police officers are willing to carry the deceased and work with the funeral home. The following day, I received an email from Leo Dumont to make me aware of Corporal Gott's conduct. He explained to me that Corporal Gott provided accurate information and was very helpful. Mr. Dumont described Corporal Gott as a great officer and class act. Corporal Gott's actions on April 13th were spot on to our department mission statement. He was prepared to handle a sensitive call during triad times with the COVID-19 pandemic. Corporal Gott was professional as he conducted a proper investigation and worked as a team with the Dumont Sullivan Funeral Home. He displayed community policing practices, and he ensured that the needs of a grieving family were met. I'm extremely pleased with how Corporal Gott handled himself, and very thankful that you have shown such interest in sharing his actions with the board and residents of Litchfield. Very respectfully submitted, Benjamin E. Sargent, Chief of Police."
Fantastic.
These are things that go unnoticed most of the time, and it's just a wonderful thing that he did in a very difficult time. And I thought we should share our condolences to the family too, by the way.
Yes.
Very important. So
Thank you for reading that, Bob. And Troy, if you can send Corporal Gott a thank you from the Board of Selectmen,
Sure.
greatly appreciate that.
I'm just wondering, we're becoming now with these over 55 communities, we are definitely probably going to see more and more of these situations. I mean, I don't know how many people die at home, but I'm just wondering, how often does this happen here in town?
that's
Not
the
sure,
first
but
I've heard of first I've heard of a policeman helped to carry out a deceased member that I know of.
Yeah, I've never heard of it either, but
I mean, maybe we can reach out to the two chiefs and find out how often is this an occurrence in town.
Yeah.
I understand you putting a letter together, but in previous times that we've had things come up with the police department, a letter of not a letter of commendation, but a letter that would go into his file is very helpful for him for promotions and things like that.
Well, this
Yeah,
letter, yeah,
absolutely.
this
Definitely.
letter would go into
into
the
it.
personnel file. Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Troy. Seeing that it's 7:07, I will open it up to public input. Mr. Burnell, do we have anyone in the public online? I believe we're going to have Mr. Krebs this evening. If so, could you please open up his line?
His line has been opened. Can you proceed?
Good evening, Ken. If you could state your name and address for the record, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear anything.
No, he's not speaking thus far. He looks like he's bouncing on and off of mute.
Ken, you've been unmuted again. You want to try?
I only hear a woman's voice.
That's your wife, Robert. You forgot to take out the garbage.
No, she's out back watching it on YouTube TV.
Looks like his line's unmuted, but we can't hear him.
Well, yeah, why don't we just keep going, and then
All right.
if he comes on, we can.
We'll keep public input open, and if he comes back, we can jump in. So we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is,
It's a soil away.
soil away donation, fire trucks, police cruisers, disinfecting. Mr. Brown.
So we also, Selectman Leary had asked that we place this on the agenda. We were recently notified by the fire chief that a local company, local being the town of Hooksett, Soil Away, had reached out to area fire departments and police departments, and they've offered for no charge to disinfect our safety vehicles. So we were able to send up 5 fire engines, and we drove them up to Hooksett. They have a process where I understand they hook some equipment to the heating ventilation system in the vehicle, and they run it for a period of time, and it totally disinfects and sanitizes the entire cab of these vehicles. So really, really great process, and the fire department really is thankful for this. Well, once it was done by the fire department, the owner said, hey, make sure you spread the word to your police chief, and we'd love to have them bring their vehicles up. And as soon as Chief Sergeant received this word, he brought up all of our frontline vehicles too. So, and again, the same product, same process. It went really well. So
This was brought to our attention from a resident who reached out to us.
it was a resident, Chris Pascucci,
Yes.
who is knows the owner of Soil Away and learned about this service that they were providing to our public safety departments for free. Reached out to Chairman Weber. We passed the information along, and our fire department, police department was able to take advantage of it.
So it was a fantastic service to help out our first responders.
Now, is Soil Away from Litchfield, or where are they based?
It's in the
out of?
town of Hooksett.
Okay.
They're up in Hooksett, yeah.
Do they have any connection to Litchfield?
The only connection I'm aware of was that they were the owner knows Chris Pascucci through either business or
Okay.
personal acquaintance.
So
I think it's fantastic that they volunteered to do this stuff free of charge to the town too. Shows that there really are good people out there, and I would even throw it out there if anybody needed a service, they might be the people to contact after what they've done for us. I've never used them, but I would seriously consider it.
definitely, and Troy, once again, if you can send a letter of thanks from the Board of Selectmen to Soil Away.
Will do. Yes.
Thank you. Looks like Mr. Krebs has left us. Oh, he's coming back.
Yeah, he said he was going to drop and try to reconnect.
Okay.
All right. Well, right along the next item is Solve Manufacturing. And right along the same story here is Soil Away. Solve Manufacturing is a company, I believe it's in Derry, and they make salon products. So during the COVID-19 crisis, they quickly switched their manufacturing process because salon products are very similar to the hand sanitizer products. So they were just able to change their whole manufacturing process, and they've been producing gallons of hand sanitizer for public safety departments, as I understand, and emergency response folks.
And they're donating it.
So we were able to get 4 gallons of hand sanitizer for the fire department. And I believe the chief has, shared that with the police department
He did,
too.
yeah.
So again, a company, I like to say a local company being right next door in Derry, being very generous during these trying times.
Yeah, once again, a company going above and beyond. And if you could send another letter of appreciation, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Just shows there are good people out there.
There definitely are.
Steve, do you want to try public input again?
Yes.
So Ken's back.
Mr. Krebs, are you with us now?
You got nothing?
Yeah, he looks to be unmuted.
He and I are chatting, so I'll try to get him on the telephone side then.
Yeah, he can call the number, right? Isn't there a phone number they can call for?
Yes, it's at the top of the
Well, that would be
meeting.
that he's having communication problems, but I wouldn't be able to get him through the speaker. He was only to inform me that he's having technical problems. Yeah,
But if he calls in, we'll get him to the audio.
through that.
If he calls in on the number, the
Oh,
WebEx
oh,
number,
yeah.
yeah, he'll be tied right in.
Maybe John can have him do that.
Yeah, I think it's what John's looking
I
at.
am working that now.
Thank you.
Want to go to the next one?
Yeah, so we'll continue on until we have him. Next item is road agent, Mr. Brown.
All right. So what I've done is based on, everyone's awareness that we have this vacant position, road agent. I have prepared a job notice posting that we can place in the newspaper and on our website. It kind of gives a general description, a summary of what a road agent does, what the responsibilities of a road agent is. And then I also prepared a job description. So I think the goal here is that we break away the road agent. The road agent is separate, appointed position by the Board of Selectmen from what we have in the previously called the highway agent or highway department manager, where they perform both functions. And I believe from what I've understood from the Board of Selectmen, our last time we talked about this, is that we wanted to separate those two functions. So I prepared and shared with the board a draft notice, a draft job description. You've had that for at least a week now. And I wanted to see if you had any input and how the board wanted to proceed with, advertising, or if there's some questions you had about the position itself. And just a recap, this is an appointed position. I've written the job description so that's administrative. It's an annual stipend of $1,000. And it really is a person that would oversee the operation of the department administratively. So it's going to be responsible for reviewing and issuing all the contracts, scheduling all the paving work that needs to be done, securing all the plow contractors that we use, the line striping for our roads. All that management of our infrastructure would be done by the road agent, obviously within budget constraints and obviously working with the Board of Selectmen. The road agent, the way this is written up, is not a working position. It's not going to be someone that's going to jump in a plow truck and operate during snowstorms. There's no requirement that it has a commercial driver's license. It's truly administrative. So I think that's important that everyone understand that's the way I've written this. Because if we disagree with that, then we want to make sure we tweak it and get it so it's what we all agree with before it's advertised.
Mhm. Okay.
It looks like Ken may have been asleep on the phone.
Okay,
I just heard someone say hello.
yeah, he looks like he's muted right now. Looks like he's muted right now. Let's get through this item on the agenda, and then we'll go back to public input.
Okay.
I got it.
So did everyone have a chance to read the job description that Mr. Brown had sent out to all of us?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
It looks good.
Okay, so the next item would be making a motion for Mr. Brown to actually post it. And before we get to that, I just want the board to understand this is something that I'm not going to support. I think right now, when we went out and we looked for the building inspector, we incurred advertising costs over the sum of $500. At the last meeting, we basically said we were not going to do any non-essential spending. I personally feel that this is non-essential. We have a road agent in place right now that I believe is doing a incredible job at what he is doing. I've had conversations with department heads where he interacts with. There's been nothing but positive feedback. I also look at it, and our last road agent was the one who brought him in, and it was under the guise of, that he would be the tutelage under him, and he'd get to the point of being the road agent. And he sold his business in order to do it. And I wholeheartedly feel right now that we have the right people. And I don't think it'd be physically responsible of us if we go off and spend over $500 in advertising fees. We also are at a point now that snow's going to fly sooner than later. So we have to start getting a plan. The building inspector position probably took 3 months to find someone to put into it. So at this time, I don't think this is the right thing for this board to do. But however, we'll do whatever the will of the board is.
Probably one of the few areas that you and I'll disagree on, because I hark back to when we appointed him to be the road agent, highway manager, that we said we were going to put the road agent out to look for and to advertise. And I believe that it is very imperative that we keep to what we said we were going to do, rather than changing course.
I fully understand your point.
Yeah.
Rich? Oh, let's keep bounced off. Mr. Pinciero, your thoughts?
I'd like to hear what Jack has to say.
I also feel this is another layer of management that is not needed. But Mr. Pinciero, your input?
I have a problem with the 49,000 or so amount of over expenditures in the budget last year. I think that we need to look at the budget and make our decisions from how money is handled in that department.
Well, a big change in that budget last year was obviously the resignation of the road agent and changing, then we had another employee come on full time, which changed out the health insurance payout, and we had some other issues as well. So a lot of the overages were all working through me, working through the Board of Selectmen, knowing that there was equipment that we needed to purchase, and we managed it as a team. There was no surprise. We knew the overages that were happening. They came to this board and were discussed and approved. So it wasn't mismanagement.
Mr. LaSalle, your thoughts?
Well, I'm satisfied with the highway manager. I understand the point that Robert's making, that we made a decision to go out, so I as a new person on the board, I don't feel real qualified to really have much of an opinion on this. I am satisfied with the work that Mr. Brown is doing in the highway department. So I'm just a little bit of a loss as to making a decision on this at this point in my own mind.
Well, as a board, we need to take action, because if the will of the board is to go off and advertise, that process is going to take a while, and we will need somebody on board, I would have to say, by July 1st to start getting plow contracts in place and coming up to speed. So, I mean, the time is of the essence for us to give Mr. Brown, Mr. Troy Brown, direction on which path to go.
I understand that.
I don't think it's a knock on his performance or anything. And Kevin and I had a very long conversation about it. And it's not even a threat to his position as the highway manager. This is strictly a road agent issue. And it's what, again, I'm just going to repeat myself and say, it's what we said we're going to do. And I don't like going back on what I say I'm going to do. Doesn't look well.
I assured Mr. Brown when I was visiting with him on Monday that this had nothing to do with the position of manager. It was to give him a person for a little more supervision, or someone he could go to. I feel the same way as Bob.
Okay, so what's the will of the board? What direction would we like to give Mr. Brown?
I would make a motion to give Mr. Brown permission to go ahead and post the position, and let's see what happens from there as he has written it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Leary,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Pinciero. Mr. Leary, your vote?
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero?
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle?
Aye.
I'm a nay. Motion carries 3-1-0. So let's go back to public input and see if Mr. Krebs is now with us.
Grab your line's been unmuted.
Hey, Hunt.
Hello.
Hi there. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Kenneth Krebs, 22 Campbell Drive.
Welcome. Good evening. So the floor is yours for public input. I know you sent a lot of us a lot of documentation. You have 2 items you'd like to present to the Board of Selectmen. So the floor is now yours.
Yes. For the issue 1, the fence over my property line. I don't know if you've read it, Ball, but the former inspector, the new inspector, and even Mr. Leary and Mr. Brown, Troy Brown, the administrator, have all seen this fence. I gave you a picture of it. It clearly shows the fence is on my side of the property line. Now, when I was told it was a civil matter, I went to the court, and the court gave me 3 things to do before I bring it up as a civil matter. And I did them. I can't talk to the neighbor. She doesn't want to talk. So I sent a letter. She discarded it. I sent a registered letter. She would not acknowledge it from the post office because I picked it up. I have it in my possession. This property line marker has been surveyed 3 times. It has not moved. I sent my first complaint to the Litchfield Police Department was April 10, 2019. I sent another one April 16, 2020, and they told me to stop sending her harassing letters. So I'm stuck at what the court said to do before I bring it to them is the Board of Selectmen. So I don't know what to do. The fence is on my side of the property marker, about 30 feet of it. And I'm asking that the Board of Selectmen request, direct, whatever terminology you use for my neighbor to take their fence off my property. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, and you did reach out to myself and to Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown, we reached out to legal counsel, and their direction was this is not. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we reached out to legal counsel. Legal counsel responded back to us that this is a private matter between 2 abutting property owners, and those parties should try to work it out amongst themselves, or one of the parties should initiate legal proceedings. It's not a town issue. We don't own the land. It's not in our, it's just, there's no interest here at all for the town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By following the directions of the Hillsborough County Court, they said to bring it to you for resolution before bringing it to the court. There's no boundary dispute. I have no boundary dispute. This line is marked and has been checked by 3 New Hampshire licensed surveyors, and it's in the record of deeds on my plot map that this is my land from that one picture I showed you. We're talking 3 different stakes that have been placed, and it's on my side. Is this not a legal that I can have the police say, get your fence off my property, or can the Board of Selectmen write or talk to them and talk to the neighbor and get their fence off my yard? It's not a civil matter, it's a legal matter.
I spoke to Captain Scotty. He's been involved with this quite deeply, and he said the same thing that Troy just stated, that this is a matter for the court and not for the town. We really don't have any jurisdiction here. It is a property dispute between 2 people, and who's ever right and wrong, that it makes no difference. But it is something he's going to have to go to court and get a court order for that.
And Mr. Krebs, you have a letter that I responded to, so you have official response from the town stating exactly what Selectman Leary just said. And you can provide that to evidence to the court that you did approach the town and the town informed you that we have no jurisdiction.
Okay. But as long as it's clear what I'm asking, right?
I think it's,
There is no property dispute involved.
you're asking for the town to exercise whatever legal capacity we have to have a fence that's on your property that does not belong to you removed. And because it's not our property,
Correct.
we have no regulations on the placement of fences. It's a matter between you and the abutting property owner, not the town of Litchfield.
But there is a regulation on dispute boundaries.
What?
Not even dispute boundaries, is putting up a fence viewer on a property. There needs to be an agreement in writing and recorded in the town records, shall be binding upon the parties and all succeeding owners. There is no agreement.
Again, it is a matter for the court. It's got to be a court thing. It's not a town thing. So
Then I ask one more question. Is there any agreements in the town that say that there's a fence could be put up between our two properties?
None that I'm aware of.
None that I'm aware of.
I'm not.
Mr. Krebs, what was the
I've only been here.
what was the section of the regulation that you just read off?
It's the RSA,
Which RSA is that? If you
section 47.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
I'm trying to read it.
Okay, thank you.
Chapter 473-1.
473-1.
1.
All right, thank you.
Title XLV11.
VI.
Boundary fences and common fields.
Okay, thank you. I just want to,
Anyway.
I want to read it
I-
for my own knowledge.
I understand what you're saying. I have to take what you say, but the thing is protecting me that you, and the court tells me that it can be resolved at your level, not at, it doesn't have to go to civil court. There's no property dispute. I have no property dispute. It's somebody putting their private fence on my property. Okay.
I don't want to make assumptions, Mr. Krebs, but I'm going to assume that the court's standard response to a complaint like this would be to make sure that you've exhausted all avenues before filing court action. And I think the court probably was right to see if there are setback requirements for fences in the town of Litchfield. We do not have one. So, I think the court was just making sure that everything at the local level was addressed before it goes to the next level, if it does.
And I think based off of the letter back from the town, you have all the documentation you need to show the court between the, unreceived certified letter and the letter we stated from our legal counsel. Hopefully that will get you the direction that you need, with the Hillsborough Court.
I will just add to that you just brought up something, that the setback, it was recommended by the former building person, the new one, the police department, that I do a setback. When I'm building my fence, I'm building my fence now. But this same thing applies to me that doesn't apply to the other party that puts their fence on my property. You can recommend, but it doesn't, you have to have an agreement to put a fence on a property line. There is no agreement. Okay. I really want to stop on this one because this is 2 years in the making, by the way. I have so many complaints from that neighbor that I can't keep up with these. Okay, I'd like to go to, I understand you guys, it's a civil matter and I'll take it up with the court. Can I go to issue 2 now?
Yes.
Because there was another complaint by my neighbor, I got served this cease and desist order for putting my shed up. Trying to find it. I don't need to find it. You guys have that on record. So I get a permit. I put up my shed. I measured it out by the new article that says 10 foot, 10 foot. So I put 12 foot, 12 foot just to be, because I have a nice neighbor. I get the permit on a Friday. I put the shed up, or the contractor came and built the shed. Halfway through it, I get a cease and desist order for building this shed. Now, I have it might be my mistake, but I thought the article said 10 foot, 10 foot property line. So through Mr. Brown, I've noticed that my certified plot map says 20 foot. And then he brings up it's 50 foot. So I have a 10, 20, or 50 foot. I don't understand which one I'm going to be using, because you can't give me a definite, what is the ROW length of Talent Road, which is a secondary road. I'm still waiting on information on that. In the meantime, the shed sits there locked and not used with the cease and desist order on it. I'm not touching it. I did raise it because I'm going to have to move it. I just don't know how far.
Well, you'll have to move it to the 50 feet that's stated in the ordinance, unless you receive a variance from the zoning commission. But that would...
No, that's not the question. I have a certified plot map that's in the Hillsborough County that tells me the ROW is 20 feet. And I have an article that says that you guys approved, or we approved, for 10 foot, 10 foot.
I don't think so.
I have all the information that you need.
We have the ordinance. I think we have the ordinance as well, right? Isn't it 50 feet from right of way or a road?
Yeah. So what the department issued, the town issued, was a stop work order. And I personally contacted you, Mr. Krebs, in the morning when we learned that the shed was being constructed, and someone brought it to our attention that it was not meeting the setback requirements. We researched, and your property is very unique, where your front property is obviously on Campbell Road. It's a 50-foot setback. That's the setback requirements for the front line, front property line. Then
I understand the ordinance.
Yeah. And then if you look at the ordinance, it also talks about the fact that all public right-of-ways, there is a 50-foot setback as well. So your property is unique, where your front property line is bordered by a public right-of-way, and your rear property line is a public right-of-way. You have a 50-foot setback on both your front and rear property lines.
Correct. In your same ordinance regulation from the town, you have an example of a typical non-arterial roadway, which is Talent Road, a 50-foot right-of-way. It is measured from the center of the road 25 feet both sides. So what are we talking about right-of-way?
So in my conversation with you, I told you that we would try to research what the right-of-way is for Talent Road. And we've been trying to conduct that research. I've been in correspondence with the surveying company you used to determine where the right-of-way terminates on your property. Once that's identified, you measure 50 feet from the right-of-way.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Your regulation is saying 50 feet plus whatever the right of way is.
Correct. So,
So you're going to tell me I got to put a shed 75 feet away from the center of the road.
It would be no different than,
That's what you're saying.
yeah, what I'm telling you is that it's going to be a 50-foot setback from the right-of-way. So that would have to be at the edge of the right-of-way. I'm not talking edge of pavement. Talking about the edge of the right-of-way. What I don't know is, in your certified plot plan does not identify the right-of-way. Right-of-way can be
Yes, it does.
different. A right-of-way is different than your property line in some cases. In some cases, your property line and the right-of-way can be the same. The 20-foot setback that
I
you
agree.
see on your certified plot line is, if you see the reference, it talks about typical setback requirements. And I actually believe that there was an error in your certified plot plan where it identifies that the rear is a 20-foot setback. It should have been 50-foot setback.
I'm only go. I am not an expert at this. That's why I asked you those questions before.
okay.
But I can see on this example in your zoning reg a 50-foot right of way, and it is measured from the center of the road 25 feet to both sides.
That would make
And the
sense.
same one for the opposite.
No, I believe it's 50 feet from the center of the road, both sides. And there are
That's
roads
not
that
what
are
we do.
grandfathered. There are roads in town that are grandfathered, but they are older sections of the road, such as 3A. Because I'm in one of those where it's a 25-foot on either side of the center line. But most of the roads in town are 50-foot either side of the center line.
So that doesn't. So Mr. Brown is looking for this information because whatever it states in this information will tell me
Right.
where are you measuring from to come up with this road right away.
I think in real simple terms, try to visualize this.
Mhm.
The right-of-way, if you measured from the center road, wherever it's measured from, but just say we determined that the right-of-way, Talent Road is an old road, ends up being 5 feet from the edge of pavement,
Mhm.
right? You would need to measure, you need to set back 50 feet,
Mhm. Yep.
right?
That line.
And sometimes these older roads, they have a very small right-of-way.
Mhm. Yep.
You understand that,
And
Mr.
I
Craig?
think maybe what he's confused about is the right of, what the town owns as far as 50 feet either side of the center line versus the town ordinance that states it has to be 50 foot from the road, that what's considered the edge of the road, which is the road plus pavement plus the pack.
I'm considering 50 feet of right of way as measured 25 feet from the center of the road. Then
Nope.
you add on 50 feet
Nope,
on top of that.
nope, I think you're incorrect there.
That's what I'm reading right out of this regulation here.
Well,
Help me out here.
listen, we're not going to
Trying to
solve this
follow-
We're not
problem.
going to solve it, but
We're not going to solve it until we determine where the right-of-way is on your property.
Mhm.
And wherever that right-of-way is, your shed needs to be 50 feet back. Or,
Correct.
as I've told you verbally and I've told you in writing, that you apply for a variance to seek relief from the zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
I can't apply for a variance if it's in question what the right of way is. I have to be specific in that, and Mr. Riley gave me the information to apply for it.
Yes, that's fully understood.
And he said it's 20 feet from the property line. typically. I don't have a problem with the 20 foot. I have a problem with the 50 foot. You cut my yard in half.
I mean, it really comes down to, is it measured 25 feet off the center line or 50 feet off the center line? And I think that's what we have to get direction on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't get hung up on that because, like I said, some of the older roads, the right of ways can be all different.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
So we need to determine where the right of way is on your section of property.
Yep.
And
I
you,
need to determine.
no, I believe Mr. Brown reached out trying to get a determination on it.
I reached out to the surveying company that you use to do your certified plot plan, seeing if in their files, if they had anything that they found that could identify the right of way. The maps that I've looked at here at the town office don't indicate a right of way on the maps that we have found.
Okay, to understand you correctly, once they find that out, I have to add 50 more feet onto it.
You would need to be 50 feet back from wherever the right of way terminates on your property.
Yeah, Troy's right.
So I add 50 feet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or seek a variance.
Correct. Go to the ZBA.
Well, right, and I need to seek that variance once it asks for specific, what are you seeking a variance for? I'm seeking a variance for 40 feet or something.
Correct.
I don't have any specifics I can seek a variance on until I know where that right of way is and then measure 50 feet. I don't know if I sent a picture of the right of way.
I believe you did. It was in one of the photos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I didn't send the picture was 50 feet from my property line. And what it shows, I have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because I only have 75 feet from my house is the right of way, the 50-foot mark.
So
So you confine me to a 75-foot square to put a 16-foot TED.
So your red markers that you show in the photo, those are what, 50 feet off of the center line? The orange stakes?
No, that's my property line.
That's your property line, okay.
Those are my property line. I didn't send you the picture of the red stakes inside my property.
Oh, I do see
Yeah,
I do see a couple here. It's on the photo that you sent that shows your shed. I think to the right of it, you'll see some orange stakes.
Correct. That's 50 feet from the property line. That's what you're saying I should do.
Well, not until we determine if your property line and the right of way are the same line. So we got to determine that. We got to determine that spot. First, we got to determine where the right of way is, and then from there, you got to add a 50-foot setback.
yep.
Correct. And then that's what I can base my variance on.
Correct. So we'll keep working on trying to get you, what the right of way is for talent. And we'll get that over to you. Then from there, you'll know exactly what variance you'll be wanting to ask for.
Okay, because Mr. Riley said he can't see it in May anyway. I can only wait till June. I
Okay.
have to wait till June to submit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because there's a certain notification process, correct?
Correct. And and he said it's too late to get the May meeting.
Okay. All right, so let us work on our end to find out what the right of way is for you. And when we get that measurement, we'll give it to you. And from there, you'll know your course of action.
Well, it sounds simpler than it's going to be on my part, but this is going to cost me money to move it, and I voided my warranty on my shed.
Well, the question would be, why did you continue to build it when they gave you a cease and desist order? It would have been a lot easier to stop and then start again in a new location if it wasn't approved.
Sir, I do not like talking to you. Mr. Weber,
Yes.
The shed, Mr. Brown, the shed was more than halfway constructed. You can't move a half-constructed shed.
You can
So I
decon-
asked Mr. Brown if I could finish so that I can move it without damaging it. I have already I can rent a forklift that takes up 6,000 pounds, and I can move it anywhere I want in that yard. This is a cost I have to incur because I was given a permit to put it where I did.
Mhm.
But you were, Mr. Krebs, I did talk to you on the phone sometime right around 10 o'clock in the morning. As I understand, you were still working on the base and there was time to stop
the base
construction.
Mhm.
But
The base
you told
was
me,
completed and a wall was up.
you told me that you were going to proceed with construction, finish the project 100%, and if it had to be moved, you would move it. I gave you a courtesy call telling you what the situation was and that a stop work order would be coming down later in the day. You chose to continue with the construction and actually completed it 100%.
And I told you that on the phone. It needs to be together.
Okay, gentlemen, we're not going to
Or you
resolve,
move it.
we're not going to resolve that piece of it. I do apologize if a building permit may have been issued in error, but we will work I can't even speak. We will work very hard on our end to get you the answer of the right of way as soon as possible. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. And I am ready to rent the equipment to move it when I know that.
Okay, so let us keep going on our end to get you the answer, and then you can, you'll know exactly where you have to be, and if you want to file for a variance, you'll know the distance that you want to file it for.
And please understand that Mr. Leary has been on my property without my permission, driving on it and taking pictures.
That has been noted.
Appreciate that.
I drove by your property. I was not on your property. I was on the road.
You drove your
I
van
pulled on the
at 6
side of
o'clock
the
in the
road,
morning.
and I
onto
took
my
pictures of
property.
the town.
All right,
And I took
gentlemen,
pictures of
let's-
You don't own the road.
Let's
You
move
don't
on.
own the road.
He needs to be excluded from this so I can get this done the way you want me to.
Okay, it has been noted. Let's move forward. Is there any other input you'd like to
Okay,
present
sir.
this evening?
No, but your inspector not only messed up giving me the permit, but he didn't look at the wires above the shed itself. So I had to go research that myself and got the clearance from Eversource that they're 4 feet above the roof, and that's okay because 3.5 feet if nobody goes on the roof, if there's no access to the roof. So I solved that before the inspector sees it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, because I am trying to follow these regulations. I cannot help who I live next to. I have one more civil matter that I got to deal with her, and an EPA matter that I got to deal with her. So I can't get no help in her stopping, so I can take some of these to court. The others I was hoping the Board of Selectmen could do. But
I mean,
you for your help.
we would like to help, but none of these fall within the realm of our power. We have no authority over the ZBA, and we have no authority over property disputes because it's not town property. So we can help you with the pieces that we can and be more than willing to do that with finding the right of way and helping you with the procedural matters of getting in front of the ZBA. But we really, as a board, cannot do much more than that.
For issue 1 for the property, it's not a property dispute. For issue 2, that is what I need help with. The other 2 issues I can take care of myself.
Okay, so we'll work diligently on number 2, and we'll get something back to you in the very near future.
Okay. I thank you and apologize if I get upset, but I really have just reacting to one complaint after another that I have to number them.
It's fully understandable, and we greatly appreciate your input and coming forth this evening.
And I would like to say one last thing, since you guys do not know me and you know each other. I'm a retired first sergeant in the military for 22 years. I am a retired supervisor of federal security officers. I had to retire because of cancer. I'm supposed to be taking it easy. And when you brought up Corporal Gott, you reminded me. I had a complaint from my neighbor because I put the leaves in the cul-de-sac. I was taking them away. I had a cancer treatment that day, and Corporal Gott understood and helped me to try to start my leaf vacuum. But I was overwhelmed by the treatment, and I had to go in, and I told him I would do it the next day. And I just want to bring up Corporal Gott because of what you said earlier.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. You know, also I want to thank you for your service.
I had to retire early, though, for stress. And this neighbor of mine is stressed, and I don't mean to bring it on to you guys.
That's quite all right. But once again, thank you for your service, and I hope your treatments go well and you get healthy quickly.
I am past that. I am cancer-free for 4 years now.
Oh, fantastic news.
But I am retired, and I have to watch my anxiety attacks, which I'm getting again.
Okay, so let's see what we can do to help resolve this matter for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Mr. Brunel, do we have any other public input on the line?
There is no other public input.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to close public input at 7:55 p.m. So the next item on the agenda is the second review of the conference and travel policy. Mr. Brown.
Okay, as I had mentioned at our last meeting and went through some of the highlights of the policy, this is one policy that according to the policy, is to be reviewed by the Board of Selectmen on an annual basis. It sets out the procedures that our employees are to follow when they're traveling to conferences, workshops. It covers everything from hotel to daily spending allowances, airfare travel, and that kind of stuff. Policy's been in effect for many years, and it seems to work. We don't have any issues with it. Everyone seems to understand it well, but it does require an annual review. So this evening, unless anyone has any objections, I'd like to see it adopted as presented.
Has everybody had a chance to review it since our last meeting?
Yeah. My question on this would be, when we had the budget committee meeting the other night, and one of the items that was brought up is there is nobody traveling to conferences or anything like that right now. That money that's been set aside or that we normally expend for that, what are we doing with that on the town level?
Well, I'd have to talk to some of the departments to see how we're actually putting those on hold. Some of these conferences have already been expended. Some have prior commitments before we even talked about spending freeze. Some conferences have been canceled due to the COVID-19. So I'm not expecting a huge windfall here, but primarily it's the police department, fire department that has the largest training budgets. And a lot of these trainings are considered essential just due to the safety certification requirements of firefighters and police officers.
Yep. I know that
it's a good
it was
question.
brought up the other night with the school conferences or whatever, and it was pretty much a consensus, I think, on the board, the budget committee, or at least a majority, that anything that could get returned to the taxpayers was a good thing, and that's one of the areas that Chairman Cutter was looking at, if I'm not mistaken, what he was saying. Looking into the monies spent on conferences and travel, if anything that could go back to back to the taxpayers during this time. We understand it's an unusual situation, but any help to the residents of the town would go a long way, you know.
I think it's a great question. Can you get with the department heads, Troy, and see, what it looks like to
I will,
date, what's
yeah.
been consumed and what hasn't been consumed?
And again, what's mandatory for
Yep.
department safety of maintaining their certifications.
And did some of these, if they're not in person, did they get moved to virtual? So it'd be interesting to see what the impact will be.
Mhm.
Right.
All right, that's a good
Thank you.
question. But with the policy the way it's written, are we all in agreement that it's no changes are needed?
I think so.
I believe so.
I didn't see any particular problem with it. I just want to make sure that we're not expending anything at this particular time.
Correct.
I have Rich's concerns.
Mhm.
Okay, but that, right now, that doesn't affect the policy, but Troy's gonna go off and, get with the department heads and see what the travel budget looks like, so we can at least look at that as a board.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Troy.
So with that, we just need a motion to accept the conference and travel policy, and then when we all get together next, we can sign it.
So moved.
We have a motion by
Second.
Mr. Larry, second by Mr. Pinciero. Any discussion? Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero?
I,
I am also an aye. It carries 4-0-0. Next on the agenda is the second review of the credit card policy. Mr. Brown?
I just echo the same thing I just said about the travel policy. We went through the highlights last week or our last meeting. This policy, we have several employees that have been issued credit cards, and this policy lays out the way those cards are supposed to be used, what's the allowed expenditures. And we have a $30,000 credit limit combined with People's Bank. Every employee, depending on the purchasing that their department typically does, has a different level of credit. So some of the credit card holders have a larger line of credit, and it's again just primarily due to the expenditures of that department, whereas others have a very small line of credit. But the credit cards is a way of a lot of our department heads make purchases on an everyday basis. Very common today. Anytime a credit card is issued to a new employee or a credit limit is increased, it's all reviewed and approved by the Board of Selectmen. So I have brought some credit card limits increases to this board, and they have approved them. So
I believe the last one was IT.
IT, we increased police. They were having problems if they had some, they'd purchase, certain equipment and have some travel and have this, and they would max out their credit
quickly.
cards.
Has everyone had a chance to review the credit card policy since the last meeting?
yes,
Are there any
I see
changes?
no problem.
Okay. With that, we need a motion to accept the credit card policy as written.
I'll make that motion as moved.
We have a
I'll
motion by
second it.
Mr. Larry, second by Mr. Pinciero. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
I,
I am also an aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. The next item is administrative report. Mr. Brown.
Okay. The first item, I think you may have seen some email traffic on this today. We have a resident who either wanted to go out and purchase some chalk or has purchased chalk, but the plan was to have buckets of chalk along the bike path so that people could write positive messages on the bike path as just a way to keep a positive atmosphere out there while we're dealing with this crisis. We talked about this with the Emergency Management Committee, and at first, we kind of thought it might be a good thing, but there was some concern, a very valid concern, that by placing containers of chalk along different points of the bike path, we're now encouraging people to touch the chalk, put it back in the bucket, and we're actually probably creating a way to help spread the COVID-19 virus. So they did not, the Emergency Management Committee does not recommend this. But the bike path is town property, and it does require action of the board to, whether you want to grant this or not. If it makes it easy if you understand, I did communicate with the resident, informed him about the concerns of the committee, and he fully understood and thought those were valid as well. But wanted to make sure the board, if you disagreed with this, then I'd probably just need you to take action. But if you're fine with this message that we're sending back to the resident, we don't need any action.
No, I mean, I think it was a very nice gesture on his part, and he was very responsive to the email back, based off the emergency management, thinking there was no good way to sanitize it, and he fully understood. So,
yeah, it's really a nice thought by the resident. Maybe people can take their own chalk out and put their positive message on the bike path. Just keep it positive.
because people were doing that, they were also doing the rocks.
That was,
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep.
But any positivity these days is a good thing.
Yeah, and speaking of positivity, the LCTV piece that was done by the two chiefs was a fantastic message. If you ever get a chance to go back and watch it, it's really worth watching. Ben and Frank did a great job.
Okay, so the next item I want to make you aware of, Dave Mellon, our recycling transfer station director, had received some correspondence. I think Chairman Weber received it, and it was regarding the hours for yard waste and brush. And as you know, currently right now, as a way to manage the amount of traffic and try to make sure we put in the proper health protocols in place, we stopped on Saturdays. We do not allow brush, leaves, and yard waste. However, we did expand hours to try to make up for, spreading out the amount of business that goes on down at the facility. And we do accept all the brush and the yard waste on Thursdays from 7 to noon. And on Sundays, we accept it as well from 8 to noon. So the biggest problem right now is that we have seen a tremendous increase in the usage of our facility in all areas of waste and recycling. When you get down in the bottom section where the yard waste is and brush and, the construction debris and scrap metal, refrigerators and air conditioners, all that stuff down in the lower section, we just, because of the increased demand right now, we can't manage the yard waste and the brush. We think of that as more of a non-essential issue at this point in time. So that's the message that our director has sent back to a resident that complained, looking to have increased hours. We have not received any other complaints. I know people are frustrated, but on the most part, they are fully understanding and cooperating. I think that I'm hopeful that in the next couple of weeks that we're going to start seeing some things, maybe some movement where we do slowly start opening up services. I know that's all up to the governor, but from everything I'm starting to hear, I think we're going to see some movement there. I don't know how quickly, but I just think the board needs to be aware of this. I don't think we should change our policy right yet, but we may have to come back and revisit this. But it's not my decision to make. I just need to bring it to the board for discussion.
You know, and I think right now he's done a fantastic job down there. You know, his number one priority is the safety of the community, the safety of his employees, and it's been difficult for him, but I think he's done a great job at trying to regulate the amount of flow going through there, social distancing, accommodating by moving hours, and you know, as much as I'd like to make every one of our residents happy, it's sometimes you just can't do it.
If you ever get a chance, talk to David one-on-one. This has been, out of all the departments that's been impacted, his department's been right up there as almost one of the top impacts. And it's not one of those areas where you expect the impact to be. It was unexpected. And I know his staff, you know, he told me this weekend was a tough weekend. They were really stressed out, and they had just tremendous activity down there. Obviously, we had good weather, and everyone's been home doing outside chores and inside cleaning.
Yep.
So
and everyone's going to the solid waste to get rid of it. So it's hats off to him for the great job that he has done down there, and it continues to be an ongoing exercise for him to keep it under control and keep everybody safe.
I echo those sentiments from a person who has used the facility for many years, not so much lately because I finally had to resort to having garbage picked up, but I still do occasionally use the dump. And I'll tell you, he's always impressed me in a real thankless position that is ripe for complaints. I just think he's done a tremendous job. And as I look back over people who have supervised the facility in the past, he has been by far the most able. And I just want to reflect those sentiments to the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does quite a job down there.
Certainly does. Anything else, Mr.
okay.
He probably has more contact with the public than any other department head.
I mean, I think he gets a couple thousand people through there a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point in time, I will inform David that we'll stay the course with the hours that we have, and we'll monitor it. You may be approached one-on-one by residents, but I think we just all work together here as a team, and we address it as you know, when we decide it's the right time to do that.
And hopefully it'll be in the next couple of weeks.
And hopefully that's
Yeah.
You know, I
That's
think the worst thing we can do right now is start changing, you know, some of the hours. It's important we just remain consistent with everything, the same message for now. I just want to give you an update on the muster site down across the street from the old fire station and town hall. Jason Brennan, a resident, I think we all know Jason's working hard on beautification of the town, along with his volunteers that he recruits. But one of the things he's been working on recently with other volunteers is the muster site, and they've been working with Steve Calloway from the Cemetery Trustees. I'm sorry. They've removed trees, they've ground the stumps, and working with some of the highway crew too. We're trying to do some leveling of the terrain down there, so that just trying to give it a general cleanup. And so that work is underway. If you go by, you'll see the highway department there trying to spread some loam. We're going to try to seed some area down there. And at the same time, you'll see a new sign that was erected. It's under construction, I think, at the old town hall. And I received a picture from Jason. Looks really sharp. They've done a signpost with PVC wrap, and he had a custom iron bracket that was forged, and he's hanging the old town hall sign. So it looks real good. He may even approach the Conservation Commission to see if they'd like to install the same type of sign up at Moores Falls Conservation Area. So if you're riding around that area of town, take a look. That's what's going on. And also, one of the things that just was brought to my attention, we talked about it at our last meeting, that the grant application for the Litchfield Landing water planning project, remember this, the CDBG grant application that we submitted on behalf of the park. It's gone through its review, but one of the things that they couldn't find in the meeting minutes was authorization for the town administrator to sign and submit all the documents that are required for the grant application. So whether we actually did make that motion or not, it just wasn't captured, or we didn't make the motion. But I'd like to ask the board this evening if you would vote to authorize the town administrator to sign and submit all documents required for the CDBG Litchfield Landing water planning project.
Okay.
Didn't we already let you do that?
We did, but I don't think it got captured.
And for whatever reason, through the preliminary audit of before they can approve it, they're not finding it in the meeting minutes. And so I'm just, this evening, I thought we'd have another vote and have it documented.
Well, what the hell are we paying you for?
So if we have that motion.
We need a motion?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
We'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the paperwork necessary for the grant, as he just stated.
So we have a motion by Mr. Larry.
Motion.
So a motion by Mr. Larry,
I'll second the motion.
second by Mr. LaSalle's. Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
Abstain. I don't think I was involved in that.
Okay, and I'm also an aye. Motion carries 3-0-1.
And that's all I have to report this evening.
Okay, also going back to the muster grounds, I guess they're for the loam and for the hydro seeding, they're going to use the money from the
Yes.
beautification calendar.
Yeah.
So into the fund. So
Very
they're
nice.
taking care of that. So hats off to Jay and all his volunteers down there for the work that they do. I know they're also going to start painting some lines up at Moores Fall because people are just parking everywhere up there. So it's getting a lot of use right now, and they're just going to try to put some parking lines up there just to keep everybody in the right direction, in the right space, so people can get in and out.
Recreation areas are in high demand right now. And
Certainly are.
as other towns and cities start shutting them down, it's putting a lot of pressure on all the public lands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
State Forest is also getting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things they may open back up, they were saying tonight in the news.
The beaches,
The state parks, the
state
White
parks.
Mountains, everything, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next we have our Selectmen Reports. Mr. Larry.
Yeah, the budget committee finally did a virtual meeting the other night. Went pretty well. We don't have another one for a few more weeks. Other than that, I had a request from the chairman of the Historical Society, Mr. Callaway, Dr. Callaway, seeking the board's permission to cancel the Memorial Day events this year because of the CV-19 crisis. Not thinking that we're going to be getting back together anytime soon in a large crowd, but he's asking for our permission to cancel the events. Now, we would still do the wreath laying, which is, that's symbolic of the holiday, and probably the flags on the cemetery, I believe he said. But as far as the large gathering, because he wouldn't have the band and the chorus there, which he usually has, and putting a large crowd together right now is probably not the best idea.
I fully
You're
agree.
going to include the parade?
Yeah, everything, Jack, except the wreath laying and the flags on the
utility
on
poles.
the buildings in town for the fallen, those that have fallen.
Okay. I think it's probably a wise choice based on the conditions we're in right now, not knowing,
Yeah.
you know, even if they start easing it up, I'm sure a large gathering's not there. And I know that
Yeah.
a lot of people that do march in the parade, a lot of the groups, baseball, softball, Girl Scouts, they aren't meeting right now. So
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion on that. I think they just would like to have our, affirmation on it.
they have my blessing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we had a Memorial Day parade at this point, I think it would violate a lot of different things.
Okay, so I'll pass that on to him. And the budget committee meeting the other night, they were pleased that how the town is trying to, watch their spending right now. And it came up, we talked about it a bit, and they were very pleased, and they're hoping to work with the school as well. But they were pleased that the town was taking this action. So a little positive feedback from them.
Great, thank you. Mr. LaSalle, do you have anything to report?
Who was that?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, Mr. LaSalle, do you have anything to report?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mr. Pinciero?
I have just two items. One is the conservation will be meeting, I think it's on May 7th. I have to check with Joni about it, to discuss a sign at Moore's Falls. The other thing I have is I was contacted before the pandemic started. There's a veterans organization here in Litchfield. They want to put the town seal on their ball cap. I think you all may have received a picture of that ball cap. It's just a picture of the American flag and the town seal. It is a town organization, basically, I guess you could call it. It's a veterans organization.
It is.
I would like the board to allow them to use the seal.
I know I've been in a lot of contact with Bobby Jacques and actually been to the meeting. Bob, you sat in on one of the meetings for us. We've been meaning to get back to this, the usage of the seal, but then the whole COVID thing hit, so it was kind of tabled at that point. We need to come back and revisit it. We did have some input from legal counsel about the use of the town seal and the way we have it written right now. So we as a board may have to discuss it and decide if we want to take action to change how the town seal can be used and who can use it. So right now, I believe it's written, if I remember correctly, Troy, only for town business.
That's right.
Is how it's stated right now. So I think we might want to do is put that on the next agenda, and we can get some background information that came in, I believe, during the past board concerning from legal counsel the use of the seal. So we might want to all get together and see what we can do to help support.
I thought we took action on that, did we not?
No, I don't think we did.
No?
I'm just wondering, does the use of the town flag also have that same restriction?
I don't know. I thought we just adopted it, but we never put any restrictions or any usage around it. But that might be something we also want to look at when we're addressing the town seal on how the town flag can be used. That's a good point.
Well, I was just thinking that perhaps we could recommend that the veterans, as an alternative to the seal, use a rendition of the town flag.
That's actually a very good idea.
With the American flag on one side, the town flag on the other.
Yeah, because I mean, the seal they put together was beautiful. I mean, the hat looked really nice and everything. And, I really think once that group gets going, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with because they're all gung ho and they want to start doing a lot of community events and community support. It's just a fantastic group from the meetings I sat through. I know, Rich, you were at the meetings also.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
I fully support those efforts also.
Yeah, I would too.
Me too.
Okay, so let's throw it on the agenda. Let's do a little research. I'll circle back with Bobby, just let him know that we haven't forgotten about them because I know they haven't been meeting due to the restraints also put upon everybody from gathering.
Yeah.
So if you could do that, Troy.
I've held it for a while. I just felt that it must be time to bring it forward, that's all.
Oh, I appreciate it, Jack.
Yeah.
It was a good thing because it was one of those that was out there that kind of lost sight based on everything we're doing with the COVID crisis right now. But thank you for bringing that forth.
Thank you.
From a rec committee, we have a meeting tomorrow evening. Other than that, I have nothing to report. So we had no items removed from consent. We have no other business. The next Board of Selectmen meeting is on May 11th, 2020. The meeting after that is actually Memorial Day. At this time, I think we should cancel it. What we've done in the past is we've worked together, and if we did have items that needed action, we'd hold a meeting on an alternate day. And if we didn't, we'd have that day off.
Okay.
And with no other items,
A motion to adjourn.
a motion by Mr. Pinciero,
Second.
second by Mr. Larry. Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
Aye.
I am also aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. The meeting is adjourned. I wish everybody to be safe and to be healthy, and thank you for tuning in.
Yes. Be healthy.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a good evening.